passage. To the top, ragamuffin keeps striving in every way. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm with them and I move with the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place I with the one Jamal skinny. We are the general. We sit up on the rhythm and over the mic incredible. I'm in right part of the rhythm, move with the rhythm, I sit down steady. Every ragamuffin you do, I feel rock and follow me. You know you love her for your life. Make me jump up on the rhythm, make me ride it right. Make me chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we chop a mic, they call we give it a general. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm with them and I move with the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place I with the one Jamal skinny.
Yes. How's everybody doing today? It's your boy Joshua Casper back at you with another dev stream. Today, another incredibly exciting event. I'm talking with Bill Podolak, from iZotope about he's already here. He's raring to jump in. About Ozone 10 recently came out. We just did a live stream yesterday about RX10. So if you missed that, check out the archive. I've got some highlights coming out real soon. If you're not already, you need to be subscribed to this channel because this is where it happens. If you're a music producer, this is a channel you want to be subscribed and following because we're going to be doing these all the time going forward. In fact, next week, we're going to have Francois Barillion from Arturia back on for round 2. And this time we're going to be talking about Coldfire, their new distortion effects plugin. But today, it's all about Ozone 10. Just real quick before we jump in, I always forget to say it. We are doing a giveaway. And the way to be involved with that giveaway is just be active in the chat. You can ask questions for Bill. You can ask questions to me. You can answer questions you have answers for, or just be positive. And we're going to choose some names at random, and then we're going to get Bill to choose some of those names randomly for some winners of some plugins. It's all quite convoluted, but it's good fun, and I'm really excited to jump right in. So join me in welcoming our guest, Bill Podolak.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill. I'm the product manager at iZotope. Been working on Ozone 10 for a while, and I'm very excited to be here talking with you, Joshua, and all of you out watching. Thanks for tuning in. Looking forward to showing you Ozone 10 and answering your questions.
Perfect. Bill, tell me a little bit about your background, maybe just you personally, and how you got involved with an organization like iZotope. Obviously, it's kind of the cream of the crop. It has been for quite some time. What was your journey like from maybe your education, your background there, and then getting into just the VST scene in general, and then how you ended up with iZotope and kind of running things on the Ozone 10 scene?
Cool. Yeah. So I'll kind of give the musical journey. Um, Started with guitar in like middle school, high school, learned drums in high school. Garage band was my first DAW, kind of started making beats in high school. I went to um, college in Nashville to kind of combine engineering. I was studying mechanical engineering, but also being close to the music scene. And I was able to get involved in a student-run recording studio there, which was really fun. Was sort of director of that my senior year. Um, Started off my career, was really lucky to just jump right into music technology. I was working at a little music tech startup in Nashville called Artifon, as they were launching their MIDI controller called the Instrument One, which got funded on Kickstarter. And then got involved with Belmont's Masters of Audio Engineering program. As part of that, I went to the Audio Engineers Society convention in New York City, where I was actually able to connect with iZotope. I went to a panel that was right around the time Ozone 8 came out, and so I was watching iZotope's chief technology officer talking about the very first master assistant, and was just so inspired by that I kind of reached out to them, was able to connect with the director of engineering at the conference, and applied to iZotope. Got the job. My first job there was quality assurance engineering, where you're testing the products, finding bugs, finding crashes, things like that. Sort of led a quality assurance team at iZotope, and then got my foot in the product management door, which is my job right now, and started working on Ozone 10 a little while ago. So Ozone 10 has been my first ever product that I've managed, and releasing it has just been super exciting. It was really a labor of love, and that's pretty much the story. I hope that was cohesive.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Before we jump into Ozone 10 specifically, I'm just curious on what sort of challenges you face as the manager of such a large product, or project rather. Like what's the day-to-day like? How much are you involved with making suggestions or tweaking algorithms even? And how big is the team behind such a suite of incredible plugins?
Yeah, so we have like 4 or 5 developers working on it, 2 or 3 quality assurance engineers, a UI designer, and a sound designer. And so everyone kind of has their domain expertise. And then my job as product manager is, in a strict sense, like prioritizing the backlog. So the backlog is sort of the list of what are we going to do. So I'm making decisions like, okay, we're going to go after this new feature. The research team has made this awesome new algorithm, and I think we should, put it here. And then as you do that, it's like, well, should we do this first or this first? Do we really need this feature? Is this a nice to have? Is this a must have? And making those kinds of decisions, basically coordinating how the work gets teed up for the engineering team to then go and develop these awesome new features. So really the challenges, which was your question, is like how build the right features, don't build the wrong features. Like build good new things and don't build bad things. And sometimes trade-offs of, well, we can build this, but if we build this, we can't build that. And those can be difficult decisions, and tough prioritization calls. And it's like the buck stops with me. So it's all kind of ultimately, my decision. If I make the wrong decision, it's going to come back to me. So that's the challenging part.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. How far, if you can be candid with us, how far ahead are you already thinking? I'm always wondering this. It seems like Apple already knows what the iPhone 18 is going to be like, for example. They're steadily releasing yearly which is insane for a piece of hardware. How far ahead are you, and you specifically, and maybe the iZotope team, focused on something? Because obviously you've got RX, you've got Ozone, you've got Nectar. When you're the product lead on Ozone, are you already 3 years out and just don't even like pay any attention to Nectar? Or there has been some crossover in the past with like bringing in elements of trash into Nectar, for example. Are you able to like go over maybe nitpick something from RX if you want to just slide it into Ozone? Like, it's just incredibly mind-blowing to me how it all works.
Yeah, so we have product managers that, there is another product manager focusing on Nectar and Neutron, another product manager focusing on RX. And I think there, I have a deep knowledge of both of those products. So, we are thinking about opportunities for crossovers, definitely. I'm thinking it's a tough balance because we need to figure out the immediate next thing, but then we also want to be planning for the future. What is music production going to look like 5 years from now? Probably pretty different than how it looks today at the rate that technology is changing. So, we're trying to be at the forefront of that and push that forward. So it's really it's a blend between both.
I bet. Well, I mean, I know that people love us chatting, but I bet more they want to jump in and actually see what's new and improved in Ozone 10. So what I'm going to do is just flip it over to your desktop. And while that's loading up, a question just right out of the gate is, if you can give your opinion on what the most compelling reason is to upgrade to Ozone 10. And that is a question coming from Michael Hopkins.
Yeah, I think it's the Master Assistant.
Okay.
I think we really took a huge step forward with the Master Assistant, and not knowing the skill level of Michael, I really believe that the Master Assistant is useful and really useful to a broad range of skill levels. And we really tried to make it that way because we don't want Ozone to have the perception that it's a beginner's only tool, and that it's mastering for babies or whatever. But, so obviously for a beginner, the Master Assistant's going to be really useful. It's going to set up a custom, signal chain. And I've seen a lot of shootouts on YouTube, my master versus Ozone master, and I have yet to see Ozone lose with this latest Master Assistant. So, for the beginner, it's going to be great there. But, okay, let's scan that span that range all the way up to the professional. We believe that Master Assistant can be a really useful second opinion, or like a AI-powered set of second ears, where Ozone is digitally listening directly to your song, and it's taking out these variables of your speakers and your ears and your room and how long you've been mixing and mastering, and are your ears fatigued? And it's just giving you this objective opinion. Here's what we think, about your track. Here's how we think it should be better. And taking that and pairing it with Ozone's new ability to import a reference track and have Master Assistant match your tone, dynamics, loudness, and stereo width to that reference track is just a really powerful tool, regardless of your skill level. So that's why I think it's the most worthwhile feature for upgraders.
It 100% is. And just to touch on your point before we jump in and give some audio examples, I used to master. I had a bunch of clients who send me tracks. I would mix and master. And someone who, I would consider myself a close to professional. I would never put the capital P on it, but just using the Master Assistant to get things done, I could get in and spend 3 days on it and just make these minute changes that for my ear are spectacular. Or I could put the mastering assistant on, which will get relatively close without those minute changes, but in seconds, literally seconds. We're not talking about minutes here. We're talking about on the second level. It's absolutely phenomenal. And to your other point about the shootouts, I actually had a video planned just before I learned that you were going to drop Ozone 10. Thank you for that. You've ruined my video plans. But I did. I had the same track mastered by just analog gear, just in the box, using whatever that professional wanted to use, a cloud version of mastering. You know, we got Cloud Bounce, we got Lander, these things, and then just the mastering assistant in Ozone 9. And I am happily putting that on hold to then use Ozone 10's master assist, because it has, I don't know if it's been built from the ground up, but you've utilized some of the new modules, which we're going to touch on in a second, and it feels like it's a completely different beast now. And yeah, hats off to that. So I second your your suggestion on why it's a good upgrade choice. Is that master assistant is just doing work, and I love it. Love every second of it.
Cool. Yeah, and it uses every other sort of aspect of what we've improved, like the 2 new modules, the other improvements. So, I really love how all of the other sort of DSP that we added can be utilized by Master Assistant, and the release just kind of had a good synergy that way between the features.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, we did rebuild it from the ground up. Every aspect of it is improved.
Nice. So I'm assuming that it's probably best to start with those individual new modules and the updated modules, and then get to the Master Assistant kind of last, because it utilizes those. And this way
Exactly.
we can have a better understanding of what these new modules are doing. So when we see them in action later on with the Master Assistant, we'll have a better idea of what's going on. But with that, by all means, Bill, take it away and let us hear the magic of Ozone 10.
Awesome. So I've got a track here that I produced, I've been using as a demo, and I've got Ozone loaded up on the stereo output. The first new piece of DSP that I'll show off, we're calling Stabilizer, and it's one of the new modules in Ozone 10. And from a theoretical standpoint, what we want to be doing is giving people outcomes. Rather than necessarily focusing on the tech, we want people to have basically a direct path to desirable, like, sonic outcomes for your master. So we thought about sort of the fundamental tools of audio engineering, which are EQ and compressor. And Stabilizer is kind of our take on EQ, where rather than focusing on, analog modeling or where to place the nodes, we just want to give you the outcome that you would achieve with an EQ, which is like a tonally balanced master, or like carving out sort of harsh areas or resonances. So that's what the Stabilizer does. I'll start playing, and as I turn this up, you'll see this meter here that we call the difference meter, and it's frequency left to right, gain up and down. So you could think of it like an EQ, where we're either boosting bass or boosting high end, but it's just going to do it automatically. You can see it boosting a little bit of bass. Carving out kind of some low mid mud, giving it a nice high end sort of shine. Let's go ahead and gain match, sort of turn this off and on. So it's really obviously benefiting from that increased brightness in sort of the upper mids, benefiting from pulling out that mud. When I turn it off, it just kind of sounds flat and dull. So that's really what we're going for here. I guess I'll start looping this region. I have the vocals muted just so I can talk over it a little bit better. And I'll start looking at some of these secondary parameters. Obviously, amount, big knob is the big one. But we also let you sort of target these different genres, and then there's an all-purpose default. So for this one, maybe I'll go for pop, and it's a slightly different target. Something like cinematic's going to be a very different target, getting less high-end. For this one, probably pop's a good idea. And then next, I'll jump to these speed and smoothing controls. hopefully decently self-explanatory, but speed is going to change how quickly the stabilizer adapts its tonal corrections as the audio comes in. So I'll switch between like a maximum fast speed and then the slowest speed. You can see the EQ kind of going crazy there, and then if I slow it down, it's almost like you have a static EQ now, moving much less often, and then 50 just kind of being a good middle ground.
Bill,
This smooth.
what should you recommend for maybe different instances? Like, why is that a necessary parameter to have in the first place?
Yeah, so it's important because I would say you kind of want to push this actually as high as you can without it. It could start to sound weird at higher speeds.
How so?
But you'll hear sort of how to describe it. It's like it will react to sort of the transient material in not a super musical way, or in a way where you will sort of notice the tonal changes happening. Because like you don't want to notice the tonal changes happening, but at the same time, a big benefit of this is like, okay, if you're going from your verse into your pre-chorus into your chorus, you might have a somewhat different tonal balance for all of those, and a big benefit of this is that it's adapting to each section, and so you want it to be able to adapt to each section, but maybe you don't want it to be kind of pulsing with each drum hit.
Gotcha.
So the lower speed is a little bit more conservative, and then faster speed is a little bit more like aggressive. But that's the trade-off there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So I'll kind of return that to the middle ground. Smoothing has sort of a similar trade-off. When it's zero smoothing, minimum smoothing, you'll see it's almost like there's dozens of EQ nodes kind of all working together. And then maximum smoothing is going to be like 3 or 4 EQ nodes. And I'll show that, and then I'll kind of explain the trade-off too. So this was the standard. Here's zero smoothing. So you can see how like here, if you can see my cursor, it's kind of being a little bit more detailed in its application, or like in the curve it's applying. And then maximum smoothing is like you got a little bass node, a low mid node, and a high end node. It's almost like 3 EQ filters. And then 50 is kind of a middle ground. And the trade-off here is like having those tighter EQ nodes like can sound a little bit unnatural. I like it with almost zero smoothing or very small smoothing, because it's like tighter corrections in the frequency domain, but a broader like high level of smoothing is sort of more conservative, less likely to sort of introduce artifacts, but it's a more precise smoothing, or it's a more precise like tonal correction when smoothing is zero.
Hey Bill, can you just turn down the music a little bit if you're because I know that there's some moments where it's good to be chatting on top of it, but we might be losing you a little bit due to the output of the.
Okay, cool.
Audio.
I just turned it down to dB.
Okay, great.
Let's try it again real quick just to make sure. Hey, I'm talking, and I'm hoping that you can still hear me.
Yeah, it's a lot better. Thanks for that.
Okay, great. Yeah, no problem. Sweet. So hopefully that came through well enough on the smoothing parameter. So let's keep going. Tame Transience is a pretty interesting button that basically just does what it says. It can basically keep, I'm like talking like a waveform here. It keeps the waveform kind of condensed when this is on, and you can definitely hear sort of the effect. Let me just toggle that off and on and listen to how the transients are tamed when I and if you don't know what a transient is, it's like a drum hit and it's sort of a spike in the waveform. So hopefully you can hear the beginning of those drums are just being contained, and what's actually happening is like the beginning of those drums are just being tonally shaped into the target that you've selected.
So do I need
useful
to
feature
worry
there.
about punchiness with the taming of the transients at all, or?
It'll reduce the punchiness, yeah.
Okay.
So off by default, but an option there if maybe you find that, for this, we might be boosting high end and we might be exaggerating like the snap of a snare or a hi-hat in sort of an undesirable way, and that's when you might reach for this Tame Transience button. Or if you're looking for like a pretty condensed, like glued kind of sound for your master, that's an option too.
Also,
'cause-
would it make sense that, and this is just me, just guessing here, if I have a very fast speed with a very unsmooth amount, I'm actually maybe amplifying those transients, and then the tame transients might actually help to reduce that while still getting the effect I'm going for with a super high speed and a less smooth line.
Yeah. I kind of like, sometimes I'll go no speed and then tame the transients and no smoothing. Like you hear that sounds weird, right?
Yeah.
It's so like this is sort of dangers. This is the most dangerous like thing, or like the most aggressive thing. And it's an interesting look into our world is like, okay, do we want to create a possibility for combinations of parameters to sound bad? Like, do we want to let you push it too far? And I think the answer is yes. Like, I think kind of
yes.
right.
Yes.
And we don't want to put the guardrails on so much that you can't possibly make it sound bad. We want to let you find, it's like find the trade-off. Well, if I push this too hard, then it's going to sound bad for this reason, and then you back it off.
That's my workflow with most effects is push it way past. I find it's easier for me to identify the sweet spot coming back from Crazy Land than it is to like push it towards Crazy Land. I don't know why that is, but I don't think I'm alone in that. So by all means, don't put the guardrails on too much.
Yeah. Right. So this is Crazy Land, but it also makes for the coolest difference meter things. So let's look at this real quick. Yeah, but it sounds bad. But maybe if we just did like a tiny bit of that. That actually sounds pretty good to me. So, we want to make this powerful and customizable and like have a lot of sonic area to explore while also having like a small number of parameters that are self-explanatory. Like hopefully speed is relatively self-explanatory. You turn up the speed, you see it going faster. You turn down the speed, it's not going as fast anymore. So, we want to have a small number of intuitive controls that allow for actually a lot of sonic exploration. So now I'm just back to normal. These are kind of like third priority controls, tertiary, but it's nice to be able to control sort of the amount of low, mid, and high correction that's happening in each sort of frequency area. So let's say we hate what it's doing to the highs, turn it all the way down, and now nothing above the highs is happening. Similar with the mids, kind of in there. Similar with the lows. So this just kind of lets you balance how much correction it's doing. Like in this case, sort of seeing more high frequency boost than everything else. So if I kind of wanted to keep that in line, just do something like that. Maybe pull the mids back a little bit. So sort of a third control there. But if you only did this, you would be missing out on almost half of this plugin. And by that I mean, we've been looking at the shape mode of the stabilizer, where it will both boost and cut the frequencies, but we also have this cut mode. And with cut mode, similar set of controls. This one has actually changed from smoothing to sensitivity. And now in cut mode, we're adaptively looking for resonances in the signal. And then we're going to attempt to sort of tame those resonances. Also harshness, like S sounds and things like that. And so I'm going to turn the vocals on for this, because most of what it's going to detect are actually resonances from this vocal. And let's check out what this is going to do. So you're seeing it just kind of poke down some little areas. I might actually turn up the sensitivity a little bit. That's what this parameter is for. And the processing that we've used here is really, really clean and transparent. So, you might not even hear what it's reducing here, and that's kind of a good thing. But in order to make it easier to control, we've added this delta button. And when I turn this on, now we're going to monitor just the difference between the input and output signal, which in the cut mode is just what's been removed. So let's check that out real quick. So we're hearing a little bit of the voice, just those extra little frequencies pop out. This is intended for mastering. So it's looking at the full tonal balance and just trying to poke down those little extra bits to smooth over your frequency response. And a neat addition to this, where Tame Transience again could become really useful, turn that on, and now when we listen to the delta, you're going to hear actually the transients being tamed. So you hear some like boominess of the snare, and then the tickiness of sort of the hi-hat, and I think probably the kick drum. So when you're in this mode, I'd be looking at settings sort of like this, and maybe, okay, if we love that oof low end that the snare is doing, then you pull this kind of thing down. But that's the cut mode, and a pretty useful, neat, very clean sounding EQ correction there.
Sounds great. It really does. It's like magic when you actually get your hands on it and put it on a few different things. It makes it sound better pretty much every time, which is outstanding.
Yeah, cool. I realized I didn't do an A/B of that before or after. It will probably be subtle. You can see the scale here. This is 3 dB, so we're only doing a dB or 2 of gain reduction on these.
Which should be,
Nice.
To be fair, in a mastering scenario, you really don't want to be doing too much more than that, right? Like if you are, then there's probably an issue you need to go back to the mix for, just for people who might not know that already. And everybody who's joined us a little bit late, thanks for coming through. We're with Bill Podolak from iZotope, walking us through the new and improved features in Ozone 10. We are doing a giveaway today, so to be involved with that, you just got to be positive force in the chat. Ask your questions, answer questions if you have answers for them, and just be positive. Cool. Bill,
Nice.
What's up next?
So the next module, I'll actually leave this on because I really like the sound. And then we'll move to the impact module. And remember how I was saying stabilizer is like, okay, let's think about the outcomes you're trying to achieve with an EQ. You're trying to get a tonally balanced master, which is like the shape mode, or maybe you're trying to tame resonances or harshness, which is the cut mode. Impact is like, what do you want to be doing with a compressor? Or maybe an expander, a little bit less commonly used. But when you're compressing a signal, like either you're trying to get sort of more punch out of it, or you're trying to sort of glue the signal together. And in some instances, you might be trying to actually enhance the groove a little bit. If you time a compressor right, you can get a little more musical motion out of the signal. And so that's what we've tried to do with the impact module. And this is a multiband microdynamics controller using this really innovative new processing that our research team figured out, where a typical compressor has this abstract set of controls where you've got a threshold, you got a ratio, maybe you got a knee, you've got attack and release times, and then maybe you're trying to have a makeup gain, or some good plugins have an auto gain. And like, you're probably at least a year into your music production journey before you really wrap your head around that. And maybe there are some people out there that disagree, and I'll say, you're a genius. That's awesome. Compressors are kind of complicated. And so we have attempted to just streamline you to those outcomes that you might be trying to achieve with a compressor with this new impact module. So let's start. Hopefully you're listening on something with some low-end response, because I'm going to start with the bass.
Bill, if you want to turn it up so people can really experience it, you should. But just be aware of when you're talking, it might be better to stop and talk in between, if that makes sense.
Okay, cool. I could turn down my output a little bit more too. Is the music still too loud on top of my...
No. I'm saying if you wanted to turn it up to let people really experience what we're about to hear.
Oh, yeah. Get ready for the punch.
Nice.
Brace yourselves. No, so what I'm going to do is just turn up the punch of the bass, and let's see what happens. So you can see in one move, this gain trace has started to activate. And every time a kick hits, it's actually expanding the dynamics of that kick. So it's boosting it, and then it's returning to baseline. And that's what an expander does. When that kick hits, it's sort of opening it up, increasing it, and then bringing it back to zero. Think about like, if this was an EQ move and you were boosting a low shelf, you would just see a flat line across this gain trace. The important part is that it goes up and then returns to zero, because that's actually expanding the dynamic range. If we wanted to solo this region, we could. And I can hear that I'm grabbing that snare too, so maybe I want to pull this back and like just focus on the kick. Let's turn that off and on just for the obvious. Listen to the bass and the kick drum.
Yes.
And
so
yeah.
It's so great that you've barely moved that slider there, and it's doing such a great job that it's even in these earbuds that I have on at a low volume, I'm already hearing a difference, and it's a good difference. So I'm excited to hear the rest of it, but I just wanted to point that out, man. It's so good to see it working so well at just such a small, minute change of the parameter there.
Totally. Right. And it's one move of the parameter, and now you have a punchier bass.
Done.
That's what we're going for, where you might have fiddled with a compressor for a good little bit to try and get that same outcome.
That's what I'm saying. Yes, absolutely.
And, alternately, we can turn it down, and it's just going to do the opposite. So every time the kick hits, that bass is being pushed backwards. So it's compressing that bass. And then what becomes really powerful is if you go ahead and turn the auto gain on. And when the auto gain was off and we turn this up, it's coming off of 0 and then returning to 0. When we turn it down, it's coming down off 0 and then returning to 0. When we turn auto gain on, it's almost like the center of mass of this line is going to stay at 0. See what I mean? So now it's compressing, but it's auto gained. And we could similarly add punch. But it's auto gained. And so if we solo this band, listen to the interplay between the kick and the bass. When I turn this up, you're going to get more kick and then less of the sustained bass. And when I turn it down, you're going to get less kick and more of the sustained bass. So that's like just kick. See how that works? So the auto gain is really powerful. It's a really, really good auto gain. You'll actually see it's a combination of a static auto gain. So like that's the static auto gain, and it'll react as I change this. But then it will also listen to the signal and actually dynamically balance itself over time. So that's pretty neat. And I, in this case, typically think, actually, this kick drum is too punchy, and I want more sustained bass. And then maybe I want to try like boosting these lower mids. And now on the gain trace, you see this kind of crisscross applesauce interaction between these as the bass, when a microdynamic happens, is being dropped, and then the lower mids are actually being expanded, but both are staying linked because of the auto gain. Like both are still centering around 0. And what that means is that it's not going to change sort of the tonal balance of your master. Because if I unlink this, or if I turn off the auto gain, sorry, now it looks really pretty. We see the bass dropping down at every kick, and we see the low mids expanding at every snare, but we got a little bit of a kind of sound like this because we're boosting the low mids.
Can you do me like an A-B real quick? Just like A-B,
yeah.
A-B? Maybe
this
A-B with the auto gain as well, just so I can get a clear...
Yeah. Because that's an example of like, okay, it doesn't sound good. That's why you need the auto gain. So it should be more snare, less kick. And a lot of the snares actually in these upper mids. So my demo settings for this song are typically something like this. I call this the hype it up curve. So we're just kind of tilting down those low microdynamics, tilting up the higher ones. So this is where I think you get the good, like A-B. So it's just getting a little bit brighter. And
can you also touch on, I know it's a feature that's been around in Ozone for quite some time, but the learn feature next to the amount slider up there at the top, and maybe explain a little bit of what that does and recommend using it or not?
Cool, good question. The learn feature is a pretty unique feature of Ozone where it will set these crossover values. So these crossovers, 100 hertz, 1000 hertz, 6000 hertz. And when you hit learn, what it will actually look to do is find sort of an area of low energy, and that will help the crossover in that spot just be a little bit more transparent. So let's check it out. And there it goes. So it thinks what it's looking for, again, is areas of sort of low energy where the crossover can kind of just sneak in and have less of an impact on the sound.
That's great to know. I didn't know that's what it was doing. So awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll typically set these myself. So I'm going to put those back to right about where they were.
Is the slope adjustable at all?
The slope is not adjustable, no.
Okay. But you can remove bands if you want.
Yeah, with this X button here.
Wonderful.
Add or remove, and it's up to 4 bands. And a kind of neat feature of this module too is the delta. We added this in both of our new modules just because we think it's so important, especially when you're making these small mastering moves, to be able to hear like exactly what's changing. So like if we turn that on and expand the highs, say, let's really juice the highs. So you're just kind of hearing a little bit more snap. That actually wasn't a super great example. Let's do bass instead. So it is like, it's I had to really juice it there to like hear the delta. Because again, we're working with mastering here, small changes. So you can see the gain scale on the side here. If you're making more than plus or minus 3 dB, or if you're going past 9 dB, that's probably not the move.
But it's information. It's information to tell you get back to the mix.
Yeah. Right. And then maybe you did do that, and maybe you dialed in some settings that you really liked. We have this global amount slider here. So maybe this is too much, but then you just kind of control the processing like that. So that's a pretty nice feature. Probably the coolest part of Impact for me is actually the way that it's can tempo sync. So you've noticed down here the envelope, and let me just demonstrate the envelope. Maybe I'll crank this band up, so we'll just listen to that. The envelope is like how quickly is this microdynamic change going to return to 0. So you could return it to 0 faster or slower, or like very slow. And it's never gonna like get back until now. You got to turn it off. With auto gain, that's not true, because it's gonna stay sort of centered around the middle. So then it doesn't matter as much. You can decide not to sync this and then control it in milliseconds. Like maybe you're mastering in your DAWs, because this is linked to like the DAWs session tempo. And so maybe you would prefer to just use milliseconds if your song's not synced up. I'll turn the auto gain off. So the trade-off here is distortion at lower values. You can get like really snappy transients, but we let people push this too far because it will kind of distort. They do it on the bass. But it's neat because now you can see we're just expanding like that very beginning of the microdynamic event. So that's pretty neat. Then you can pull it back. You can also kind of like see the distortion in there, which is cool. Like the way the line is a little bit noisy. Like that. So that's pretty neat. But the tempo sync feature is really where it's at. And like a super powerful move is turn auto gain on. I've linked these bands, so now I control them all together. And in one move, I'm going to expand the dynamic range of all 4 bands. And I go like this because it actually has this sort of opening 3D kind of effect, because what you're doing is you are expanding like the dynamic range, which you could think of as like the front to back if you had speakers. So bringing these controls all up is like expanding the dynamic range like this, and then bringing them all down is compressing the dynamic range all together and keeping it auto gained and doing it in a way that's actually tempo synced. And so it will actually sort of enhance the groove. And I'll push it too far so you can hear what I mean. Like, now this sounds weird, but listen to how it like drives the groove. And so my favorite settings for this are like, my favorite setting is typically something more or less like this, where you're tempo synced, just enhancing the groove and opening up the dynamics like a little bit. Let's A/B this off and on and see if folks can hear it. It kind of just opens it up, which is pretty neat. But then maybe you're looking to actually get this dense wall of sound glued kind of thing. Then you turn it all the way down. And every time a microdynamic event happens, we're reducing the volume of that band, but then bringing it back up. So you're getting more of the sustain and less of the transient. And maybe you just want a little bit of glue. So that's the idea there. Here, let me, I didn't show sort of different envelope times. So let me like super exaggerate it and then do these envelope times. So now I'm hearing one endo. You can kind of hear that pretty well in the delta mode too. I'm doing one endo, one endo. One and. So pretty neat stuff. Again, it's this balance we're trying to strike between like simplifying it, but also giving you all of this power and like customizability and area to explore. So we hope people feel like that's cool. Can also be mid-side, which can be really powerful. You know, maybe you want to glue the sides together and then like more punch in the mids. Like that's a pretty good combo.
Nice.
Yeah, so hopefully people find that pretty neat and useful. You know, even if you do know how to use a compressor and you've wrapped your head around ratio, threshold, attack, release, knee, you know, something like this, especially with its envelope time, with its super powerful auto gain, with its delta, you know, this might still be a tool that I think could be interesting and useful to people.
100%. Bill, I got some questions if you don't mind taking some.
Please.
Rivermint Official is wondering if the vintage modes were upgraded in Ozone 10.
Yeah, so a little bit. The vintage modes that I think this person is asking about are 4 of the modules in the list: Vintage Comp, EQ, Limiter, and Tape. These were introduced in Ozone 7, and we gave this a little bit of an improvement where we added this knob for moving between these different settings. You used to have to click these, and that's kind of annoying. Better to kind of just do up and down. And this isn't the greatest example because that's only one knob. Vintage EQ has like all of these knobs. This, I believe, models a Pultec, and so now just a little bit of a user interface
Quality
lift
of life.
and yeah, quality of life improvement. Sound should be the exact same. Sound of Pultec hasn't changed, so we don't want to be changing the sound of this either.
Another question was a question about the difference between mastering for a CD versus mastering for streaming, or mastering for DJs, I think is the term you use in Ozone 10. Perhaps we save that till the maximizer section.
It's a feature of the Master Assistant, so we should talk about it then.
Okay,
and I
great.
will 100% remember to talk about that.
Someone was wondering about the stabilizer. Jim Jonker was wondering how does it compare to something like Soothe 2 or Smooth Operator from Baby Audio?
Yeah, tough to. I'm not going to trash talk, either of those plugins. I think they're all sort of useful tools to have in your tool belt. What I can say is that we really tried to make Stabilizer the best resonance suppressor that we could, but specifically for mastering. So, while you might use Soothe, I'm using Soothe on my whistly cymbals and hi-hats, and using it throughout the mixing process. I might propose that Stabilizer might be better for mastering. But both cool plugins. I'm not gonna bad talk Soothe. I do really like Soothe.
Yeah, very, very popular plugin. So but again, I think that's more on a single channel basis, I feel like, whereas this is, as you said, tailor-made specifically for the mastering purposes. So that's great.
Exactly.
We can keep rocking, man. This has been a great presentation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I hope people are enjoying it.
They are.
So we added these two new modules, Stabilizer and Impact. And then we wanted to add some new flair to some of the most popular modules in Ozone that people already love. So add some new, but enhance, the tried and true. And so we took a look at Imager and also Maximizer. And I'll start with Imager. We redid the UI a little bit, added this kind of nice shadow. I'll just leave that off. Kind of a subtle little shadow in our vector scope there. We broke out Stereoise and Recover Sides. Stereoise was there before. This has two modes. We wanted to clarify a little bit that Stereoise actually only works when you're boosting the width of something. And then we added this kind of opposite type of control that is only available when you're reducing width. And we call it Recover Sides. And so, let me open this up because I need a little bit of a visual metaphor to make this. This is my Recover Sides analogy. Okay, so imagine, and you can still see this, right? Because I shared my whole desktop.
We can, yep.
Sick. So when you are using the Imager and you don't have Recover Sides, or you're using the old Imager, when you're taking this width and you're reducing it, think about it like this. You've got your stereo image out in front of you in your speakers. And when you reduce that width, it's almost like you are just fading out everything that is not the mono signal. Right? So you're taking all of that stereo information there and you're just fading it away. Let's listen to what that sounds like. So there's like some stereo guitars happening, like the keyboard is sort of centered but spread across the field, and you're just fading that all out. Now when I turn Recover Sides on, and then I turn this down with Recover Sides on, what you're doing is more like this. You're taking this entire stereo image and you're collapsing it. But you're actually keeping everything that was in the stereo image in there. You're just narrowing it. And so now let's listen to that, and I'm going to exaggerate it slightly, 6 dB kind of actually keeps everything in there. So now let's listen to that. So hear how the guitars are like still in there in the mono signal. And when now that I've spread it back out, it's like taking that entire stereo image and bringing it back.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Kudos to the research team on that one. Pretty neat.
Let's get some likes in the chat for the research team and that analogy. I watched your pre-release in-house videos, and I found that incredibly helpful. And that combined with the actual audio examples, I mean, it just hits it on the head exactly what it's doing, and it's doing a really good job at it, by the way.
Yeah, sweet. Good, I think so too. This one, I was pretty excited about this one. We also, this can be kind of subtle. I'm doing the most obvious example I possibly can, right? Full stereo width. And so this is often a lot more subtle, and for that reason we added this solo button. When you enable this solo button, it's almost like a delta, but what it's really doing is soloing the recover side signal. Let me play what that sounds like. So what you're actually hearing is the side signal that has now been collapsed to mono. Those are the sides now in the middle. So we could, let me real quick show off a feature of the equalizer, why not? We could go mid-side equalizer and then solo the sides. So sorry, I just turned your head inside out. But that's the side. And then if we go and we collapse that with the recover sides, now that's the side in the middle.
I need another graphic for that to be able to follow the path there.
Right. It's like some 4D chess kind of stuff. Like,
I think the most remarkable thing about it, though, is how it's listenable. Like, it's not a trash fire. What you've just done, you know what I mean? It sounds. It still sounds like you could listen to it and be fine.
Right. And so more typically, you're setting up a couple bands. Maybe you're boosting the highs. People like to do that. Maybe you're stereoizing, maybe not. This is kind of a neat effect. Why don't I show stereoize while we're here? Stereoize is like these two modes are different. We added the second mode in Ozone 9. Let me toggle stereoize off and on. So now I'm just boosting the width. So mode 1 is a Haas effect. Mode 2 is this thing called velvet noise decorrelation, which is just a little bit of like a smoother kind of frequency change. That was off, so now it's off. Subtle effect, just makes it a little more like cinematic and open sounding. Pretty neat. And then equal and opposite. You could be doing both stereoizing and recover sides, but you need to be boosting one band, reducing another. So, more commonly, people are looking at maybe a wide bass. Let me see how wide this bass is. Too wide, right? You don't really want that. And so bring this down, centering that low end. But if I unsolo, you can hear we're recovering some of that side information that was lost in the bass. So it's just going to be like a more powerful, deeper bass. Subtle though, right? So that's why we added the solo, so you can just know exactly what you're doing. So that's recover sides. While I'm here, you see these buttons up here? We got like little buttons all over Ozone with cool features that are just not not in the default UI, and so people kind of miss them. This is a correlation trace. So this thing right here is like the correlation up and down, and this is going to trace it. And so let's go back to just one band, and I'll show why this is useful. If I jack up the stereo width, look at that correlation now. We're actually getting into territory where we have more side information than center information, and that will all disappear if you're listening to it on like a mono Bluetooth speaker or something like that. And so this correlation trace view can help you kind of understand where to set this imager. And especially like if you have a track that is too wide, you should be looking to pull the stereo width down. This can clue you in on that. And then when you're pulling the stereo information down, you probably want to also look into this recover sides option. But this is too mono now, and that's totally mono, right? So we've pegged the correlation trace there. So neat feature there. And let's keep going, unless maybe there's any other ground to cover on Imager.
Just there was a question about phase correlation with the new recover sides and how it's affecting it, if at all. Let me see who.
Yeah, so the Imager is going to be all very mono compatible, not gonna produce any phasing issues.
Right, unless you push it too far, right? I mean, we were seeing there were redlining. We were redlining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not really phase, though. That's not like something being out of phase with something else. That's just too much sides. Too uncorrelated. And people can kind of conflate those terms. That's just too wide. And I randomly I resized, so nice feature of Ozone 10, really nicely resizable.
Was Ozone 9, wasn't Ozone 9 resizable as well?
Ozone 9 was also resizable, yeah.
I remember it wasn't, I believe, in 8 down.
That is an accurate memory, nice.
It was a thing, though, for a bit. I was like, why is this not happening? I'm very excited that it has happened. And that it's fluid, that it's not just go from 100 to 120. You can pretty much, if I want to see more of the spectrum, I can just pull it over to the right rather than have to boost up the entire thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Another question that I thought was a good question back on the impact module, and whoever asked this question, I apologize. Can you change? I know that there's a lot of things in the settings that you can change. The dB map, so it's right now it's 0 to 9. Are you able to change that to be a little more zoomed in or a little more pulled out?
No, you can't change that.
Okay.
That would be a good feature request, though.
All right, and where might somebody make that request? Here, right now?
Yeah, I heard you.
Nice.
Yeah, that was me. And I remember going to the beginning where I was like, the most challenging part of my job is like making those prioritization decisions. Yes, we could make this changeable. That would definitely, no question, be better. Would it be better than adding a new piece of DSP, like building a new module?
Trade-offs.
Those are always tough calls. Yeah, trade-offs.
I know that like on the EQ module, for example, there's even shortcuts to be able to zoom in on the frequency range and the decibel level, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, EQ module, you can scroll wheel this, and then
on
it
the
works.
bottom as
You can
well,
drag. No, you can't zoom in on the bottom. What you can do is change, I think, like the scaling of it, if you know what I mean. So you could do, it's in the general. You can do, no, it's in the spectrum. Yes. So many options. Such a deep piece of software. Anyways, you could do the frequency scale defaults to flat log, could be extended log, log, mel. And you're a power user, if you know what those are. You have a preference.
Another good question, and it's a question that comes on literally every one of these streams that I do, Bill, is CPU, and more specifically, how is Ozone 10 in comparison to maybe 9 and then maybe even 8? How is it handling CPU?
Yeah, great question. It's handling CPU really nicely. I mean, we've optimized it really well for M1, so if you are lucky enough to be on one of these latest and greatest machines, it's going to just hum right along really nicely. All of the new DSP that we've added, so stabilizer, impact, recover sides, imager as it started, the thing I'm going to talk about next, which is soft clip, are all not very heavy on the CPU. I will say there are aspects of Ozone that are still very heavy on the CPU, and there's just no getting around it. And it's things like the IRC3 is IRC3 and then 4 transient are like our highest quality, most transparent limiter algorithms, and they're just expensive. There's no getting around it. It's like we have a potential trade-off between sound quality and CPU, and computers are always getting better, so we're just going to go for the sound quality.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there a way in Ozone, sorry to cut you off,
that's okay.
A lot of plugins have a way to like deactivate the spectrum analyzer, for example, because those are quite heavy on the CPU, or even like a light mode of that, rather than like getting updates literally hundreds of times per second, to like just slow it down and get more of a general thing where it's taxing the CPU less, if you are running into issues, that is.
Yeah, Ozone doesn't have that. To my knowledge, it like these metering options aren't very heavy, and so you should be fine. That's an interesting idea, though. It's really the bulk of it is the DSP, though.
And another question, speaking of graphics, this was another question, and there are so many questions, everybody. I don't have time to scroll up to, but I do remember the question, and that was, are you taking advantage of GPU at all to kind of mitigate? No?
I don't think we are, no. But we did make an improvement where like the metering, I'm not an engineer, so I might butcher this explanation. The metering is like on a safe thread, like on the CPU threading. The DSP is kind of the primary thread, but the metering will not cause logic to give me the like system overload message. And so we've kind of made that improvement where you, rather than overloading the system, you might see like the frame rate of the analyzers or the metering like dip and get slower.
Gotcha.
So that pretty much should avoid the problem.
All right. Good stuff.
Sweet. Yeah, this is going great. Thanks for all the awesome questions out there. Keep them coming.
Yeah, keep coming. It's helpful, chat, if you can @ Plugin Boutique, because then it highlights it. Rivermint Official coming in hot right now with another one. He's added Plugin Boutique. It just, on this end, it highlights them for us so we can pick them out a little bit easier, even though we are reading all the comments, at least Killian is. Keep them coming. Hit the like button. Hit the like button for Bill. Hit the like button for Ozone 10 and all the new features. And, of course, be active in the chat for your chance to win a copy of Ozone Advanced. Woo. Bill,
Nice.
keep rocking, though. You're doing a fantastic job, and it's really in-depth and covering a lot of ground, and we really appreciate you taking the time and being so thorough with this.
Thanks, Joshua. Yeah, happy to do it. So now let's talk about Maximizer. Part of the benefit of my job, one of the coolest things, is I get to go talk to some high-level, top-tier mastering engineers and talk to them about Ozone. And when I do that, the module that they're constantly saying, yeah, this is my go-to, is the Maximizer. And this is our limiter, and it has sort of these different IRC modes. That stands for Intelligent Release Control. And it's kind of this thing we came up with, our researchers, where it will provide different sort of attack and release times depending on whether it detects transient material or sustained material, so that you can kind of quickly clip the transients and have a quick release versus sustained material. You don't really want a quick release because it'll kind of sound burned and like bad limiter sound. So the IRC3 is sort of our most advanced, along with IRC4 transient. IRC4 was introduced in like Ozone 7 or 8 and kind of has some additional spectral shaping on top of the limiter algorithm to even improve its transparency more. So they, those high-level mastering engineers are usually like IRC3 or IRC4 transient. IRC1 and 2 still sound good. IRC1's like a little bit thicker. 2 is a little bit more modern sounding. So a lot of people swear by IRC2. IRCLL is fast, so that's a good one. LL is low latency, a good one to use while you're producing and maybe playing MIDI keyboard or things like that. It's got true peak. That's another thing that will, there's no getting around it, increase the CPU load. You set the ceiling, you set the threshold. This is gonna, as I bring this down, this is gonna boost the sound. So let's go ahead and do that. And so now you can see as signal exceeds the threshold, we are reducing the gain. You can see it on this scrolling waveform and gain trace here, which is pretty neat. And so typically I would be finding a setting right around there. Something nice you can do is link the ceiling and threshold. And that way you don't get any like loudness boost and you can just kind of hear the distortion and how hard you're pressing it. Go IRC2. So down here, now we can hear too much, smashed. Something like that. Character is kind of going between a fast thing, which is almost like hard clipping, very slow. You'll see this on the gain reduction trace. Very fast versus slow. The workflow is like you pretty much want to push, you set the threshold to get the desired loudness, then you push the character as far as you can until it's audibly distorted. So I'll just set it back to default of 2. Nice thing, pretty much everything you can double click, return it to default. Double click that. Stereo independence is kind of neat. You can run these as 2 completely separate limiters in the left and right. You can control, remember how I said it, intelligent release control is kind of treating the transient and sustained material differently. So you can control the stereo independence of the transient and sustained material differently and scale that between 0 and 100% different. Just set that to like mono. Transient emphasis, gonna emphasize the transients. That's been there for a while. And now that I've gone through everything, here's the new thing that's really exciting. Soft clip.
It deserves a...
Yeah, drum roll, new thing.
Yeah, it needs an applause because it's my favorite new feature if I can be so candid. It's just so good. I cannot wait for people to hear this. If you're looking for a punchy, loud master, look no further than just that soft clip button right there. That is, well, I guess it's a slider, but trust me. Sorry, I've hyped it up enough. Bill, take it away. Let them hear it.
So soft clipping has been sort of notably missing from Ozone for a while. It's a go-to mastering technique, and now that we've added it, a lot of people like you are like, finally, thank goodness. And we kind of wanted to wait until we could get something really special in terms of the DSP, and that's what we've achieved here. Our soft clipper, the math kind of goes over my head, but this is all math, right? And we have these researchers doing this advanced math, looking at like the latest innovations and sometimes making their own latest innovations. And so our soft clipper does that in that it controls the saturation in such a way, like I'm doing it like that. Imagine you've got a sine wave and then you start saturating it, and so you get odd order harmonics just spread out over the frequency spectrum. What our soft clipper basically does is like controls those harmonics so that it's way more transparent and smooth and like less harsh. And then you actually, this percentage is like a wet dry, which is really nice because actually fully soft clipping something is a little bit aggressive, a little bit of an aggressive move. And so by just being able to blend in like 10% or 20% of the soft clip signal, that's a really just good mastering move. So let's listen to it. So now we're 100%, and another one of those instances where we want to let you push it too far. You're hearing those transients are just like now, and
but in a good way.
In still a pretty smooth way. And it's also louder. So really think of this as like a high fidelity loudness boost on top of the limiter. So it's actually in the signal chain before the limiter, and you're sort of boosting into it. And I would have this right about here. So now let me push the limiter a little bit more. And now let's AB. So at only 34%, like you should hear it just come forward.
It really does. It really does. And I would say in my ear, over however many internets have to go through before it gets to me, it might even be too much for this specific example. But like exactly what you're saying, is 34%. You've got so much wiggle room. You're not even talking about the light or the heavy version down below it, but like, it really does change how loud it feels, even though it's really only doing a little bit of work on a very short piece of audio. It's just amazing how much of a difference just, those little transients, just processing it and clipping those little, it really makes it feel like the whole thing is louder somehow. It's really amazing.
Totally. And, there's a really interesting mastering debate right now where, Spotify is normalizing, other streaming services too, normalizing the volume of everything. So you can make it louder and louder, but they're just going to turn it down so that everything's the same loudness. And that's a great experience as a listener. And so the debate is, well, do I keep pushing it louder and louder? Do I get it as loud as it can go? Or do I not and instead leave those drum transients? Like you could see those drum transients there, right? Am I better off bringing this down? Like look how I bring this down, and now I'm just carving those off. Should we be pushing things to be as loud as possible? Should we not?
Well, this has been around for the loudness wars as it's been coined, but I don't know who. But as a DJ, I prefer more dynamics. I mean, there's obviously a healthy balance, pun intended, but like if it's too squished, it's really difficult to get those dynamics back. But as someone has control over volume on the mixer, the output, like the main output, the master gain, the individual channel gain, the gain on the individual channel, the volume slider, literally the amp and the club, like I don't think we need to go louder. Let's keep it more musical, but I'll let you chime in on your opinion as well. But for mine, it's definitely more dynamics, less squished, but there is still a healthy balance where, to be able to bring out those details that are really quiet, if that's what you're looking to do, of course.
So I agree. Like, I put music on Spotify and I'm aiming for like -12 to -10 LUFS integrated over the song. And that's like a good level for me. But, that's just my opinion, and we're trying to make Ozone for everybody. And when I go talk to these high-level mastering engineers, they are not in the same headspace. And then, I go look at New Music Friday and the top 40, and those songs are crushed.
Yeah,
and it's like -8 dB average, and they still sound good, right? Like, there's this whole art to being able to crush it and still have it sound good that people have figured out. And so I'm not trying to tell high-level mastering engineers how to use our product. I'm not trying to say, like, no, don't boost the loudness. And instead, it's like, here is a super high-fidelity loudness boost to squeeze that extra dB, extra LUFS of loudness out of it if you want to. And the choice is yours, All
right, we're going to run a poll right now, live on the stream.
Right.
If we want it crushed or we want more dynamics. That might be
We want more dynamics. Apparently the A&R people, the A&Rs are still like, we want it loud, we want it loud.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, it might be a loaded question because I put crush, which I guess kind of has like negative connotation. But let's all be adults about it. Let's.
Yeah.
It's an art. And as you said, you're talking to people who've made a living out of it and obviously do it very well. So their opinions obviously matter. And it's a question of how much is it influencing. So if you're listening to the charts and you have more dynamics, it might it might just seem like it's quieter, whether or not it is. And as we all know, if you hear something louder, you generally think it's better or sounds more pleasant for whatever reason that is in the psychology of human beings. So it is a dance. So it makes perfect sense that you allow for wiggle room on either side of the coin, whether it be crush, super loud, you can literally hear everything in your face, to the more dynamic stuff. So that makes sense. But that soft clip feature is just phenomenal. Phenomenal addition.
Really nice. So it has 3 different types of soft clipping: a light, moderate, heavy, low, mid, high. I've seen people call it all kinds of things. And what that adjusts is how far below the threshold it starts saturating. So we wanted to integrate this with the maximizer so that the maximizer's gain staging actually works with the soft clip, because the gain stage into the soft clip is like really, really important. So it's linked to the threshold. Light is going to start saturating 3 dB below the threshold. Moderate is going to start saturating 9 dB below the threshold. And then heavy starts saturating 30 dB below the threshold for sort of a little bit of like a blown out sound if you really push it. But some people like that, especially on low values. The blown out sound isn't too bad. You can hear it though on those transients. It's a little bit crushed. Good for like hip hop though. And then light is sort of the most gentle. And it's also the least loudness boost. So light will boost the least, heavy will boost the loudness the most at the cost of more or less distortion.
I love it.
Sweet.
We
have this pretty interesting this learn threshold thing. This will take an integrated LUFS measurement as it listens and set it to whatever we want. So let's go like -10. Learn it. Bada bing, easy. And that's like right about where I had it anyways. So yeah, good choice, learn threshold. So should we go ahead and move on to sort of the 5th and final thing, bringing it all together, the master assistant, or are there any other relevant questions on that one?
A lot of them that have to do with this, I think you're gonna touch on when we get into the mastering assistant. So let's just keep the train moving. I will tell you that the poll has had 102 votes, and we're really heavy on the dynamic side at 87%. This is scientific research we're doing here on the Plugin Boutique YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, for participating. I'm going to leave the poll open a little bit longer, but just know that this poll will be used for decisions in the future for iZotope and Ozone 10. Isn't that right, Bill? That's what you told me?
That's it, crowd. You won the loudness war. It's over.
Yes, it's done. We've done it. We've done everybody. Give me a round of applause. We've won.
We did it.
Fantastic.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk about the Master Assistant now.
I do want to point out before you run it that the Master Assistant does go hard in the paint. That's a basketball reference for people who don't know. It just means it does a lot, and the DAW will freeze for just a second just before it clicks back in. So don't think we've lost the stream or anything like that. It's just doing a lot of work, and it needs a little bit of room to do it. So.
Yeah, cool. Technical explanation. This is doing some pretty computationally intensive stuff as it sets up the chain. And so we figured out, I believe on Apple, how to like multi-thread the CPU. So if you like watch my CPU meter, it's going to go to 100 for just a second because it's going to whip through all of that work and then be ready to go.
Actually, we don't see that. That's
cool.
That's the frozen part. It freezes just when it does that and then comes back.
Sweet. So the way that Master Assistant used to work is that you had sort of like a survey at the beginning. You would choose, do I want like, how intense do I want it? Do I want to do it for streaming or CD? And you couldn't like hear those choices. It wasn't really a fun or interesting interaction with the Master Assistant. And then it just left you on the module view, like, here's your chain, go ahead. And so for this, we switched that up where now that I've hit this Master Assistant tab at the top here, it's waiting for audio. So no survey, it's ready to go. The first thing it's going to do is analyze your music, and then we'll look at the screen that it lands us on. And we're back. So in, just 20 seconds or so, it's gone ahead and analyzed the loudness, the tonal balance, the dynamics, and the width of my song here. And it's set up actually a ton of different chains. And now we have this Master Assistant view where from a high level, I can interact with those chains and dial in my master and do it in a really powerful way. So the first thing I'll draw our attention to is this area that we call the target library. Pinch this in a little bit. So the target library is a set of like genre targets, basically almost like presets that we've shipped with this. And what Master Assistant has done is analyze my track, analyze those properties or characteristics of my track that I mentioned, the tonal balance, the width, the microdynamics, and the loudness. And then it's actually targeting hip-hop rap and targeting basically a preset thing where we're saying this is what the best tonal balance, dynamics, and width of hip-hop rap sound like. And in order to determine that, we went out and analyzed a bunch of great hip-hop rap songs actually defined by what are the chart-topping hits in each genre. And then if I go ahead and change from hip-hop rap to, say, pop, we are now aiming at a different target, and all of the processing has changed under the hood to hit that target. So in one click, I've changed like 50 different parameters of Ozone under the hood, which is really, really cool. You can see the tonal balance target has changed, between hip hop with a little bit more like sub bass down here, a little bit of a hyped like hi-hat vocal region up here. This is Tonal Balance Control is another product we have. This visualizes the tonal balance. And when I play my song, that white line is my song. And the idea is you kind of want to fit your white line into the tunnel. And you do that by controlling the EQ and the stabilizer in this tone match section. Let's listen to what that sounds like. Let me turn stabilizer off first. So here's the EQ. Sorry, stop and start. You can pop that off and on with these power buttons if you like. And so what we're actually doing is scaling the entire EQ that we've set up. And here we can see that EQ. A little bit drastic because my song really had a lot of mud and was really lacking in high end. And this is what it's doing. We're saying, okay, iZotope Master Assistant is setting up this curve for you. Do you want 100% of the curve? Do you want 50%? 16%? And so from here you can kind of listen and dial that dial that in by ear, which is pretty neat. We've really improved the way, not only like improved the targets that this EQ is aiming at, we've improved the way that the EQ actually learns this. So you're going to get almost like more bold curves, sort of detailed. You can see we're using 5 different nodes here to dial in a pretty specific type of EQ. So really powerful that it's able to learn that. And then on top of it, you have stabilizer, which is doing its adaptive dynamic EQ kind of on top of that. And if we turned the EQ off, you'd see the stabilizer would have to work a lot harder. And so the combination of these kind of EQ preparing the tonal balance to then just be smoothed out over time by the stabilizer is a really powerful combination and probably doing most of the heavy lifting in Master Assistant here. So pretty neat stuff there, but it actually doesn't stop. We've added these new assistive capabilities for width and dynamics, where let's talk about width match. Ozone Master Assistant is going to set up the imager for you. And so we can go take a look at what that did. Pulling down some of that too wide bass we were looking at earlier, boosting sort of this mid region, and it thought the high frequencies were just about good, just needed to be a little bit wider. And the way it's doing that is looking at the ratio of the mid signal to the side signal, and then using the imager to basically hit this target that we've created with pop, for pop. This is the width of it's the average width of like the most popular pop songs. And then with this slider, you're adjusting, again, how much do I want of it? 50% of the suggestion, 100%, 25%? Let's listen to how that sounds. Yeah, so why not? I'll go 100% on it. Let's toggle that off and on. It really benefits from that mid-range boost, but it's kind of neat because in one control, you're actually scaling all of these. So you're doing this low-end width reduction move, the mid-range width expansion move. It's setting up recover sides, so you're actually not losing that low side bass signal, which is pretty cool. And so that's the new width matching capability in the Master Assistant. Let's keep it going. Dynamics match. This is actually why we built the impact module, because we're thinking, okay, how do we help control people's dynamics? with the Master Assistant. It's too complicated to have to set and learn, threshold, ratio, attack, and release. Instead, we just want more punchy, less punchy. Measure the microdynamics of the chart-topping hits. Measure your microdynamics, and then use impact to make you sound like the average of the chart-topping hits. And so what it's done, let's see a little bit of a crisscross here. Less bass punch, more low mid punch, less high mid punch, more high punch. And
so that's actually, Bill, if I can jump in again, sorry. That's actually a little bit different than what you had it on for your own taste, right? I remember you had the low looks about exactly where you had it, but it looks like it's done a little bit of a different take on it than you.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Right.
It's also set the envelope to 100 milliseconds?
That's correct. Yeah, we made that decision because we didn't want to bank on people having their session tempo synced. Like, we could have set this to be synced to 16th notes, but just to be a little bit safer, we set it to 100 milliseconds instead. Because it's also like, okay, what if somebody, I have this song in 78, but what if it's actually double that? What if it's 156? Or like, if I crank this up to 156, then the 8th is the 16th note, and it's like, it's too much of a variable. So that was why we went with non-synced envelope. But what I would do, the idea is you're controlling this from a high level view here, more or less of the processing, change the target. But then I'm coming in here and maybe I want to make the decision, yeah, I like the tempo synced. And in one button, now it's tempo synced.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of one of those extra decisions you can make as you come in here and have fun. Someone might look at this and be like, nah, don't boost 32 hertz and just bring that down. Easy little customization choices. Maybe I want less smoothing.
That's a really good point to touch on. Maybe it's really is kind of meant to be a starting point, right? It's not meant to be the end all be all of it. It's being like, this is depending on the target we have or the target that you set. This is what we think you need to do to get to that goal, and then obviously you can go in and adjust to taste.
Yeah, exactly. And like the first decision I made was like, okay, we detected hip hop rap. That's not right. I want it to be pop.
Someone's asking, Peter McCabe is wondering how you make your own reference targets. I see the little, it looks like an addition button there. Can you walk us through that? Do you have something queued up for that?
Yeah. Can I was going to save that for last because it's a little bit of the grand finale, the coolest thing.
Okay, cool.
So there's only two more things to kind of talk about here. Maximizer as part of this. So what this is going to do is remember when I showed the learn threshold? It's going to learn -10 LUFS over the section that it analyzes. And then from here, you can basically dial in, okay, louder or quieter. And is that too loud for folks? Because now we've boosted.
It's sounding all right.
Okay, cool. Gonna get louder for a second, and then I'll bring it down. So this is just gonna make it louder, quieter. And so here's the loudness war, right? Down here, as dynamic as it should really be. You can see from the gain reduction trace, we're just touching those transients with the limiter. So here's your dynamic crowd loudness war. Here's your super loud. Too much, right? But then you can just kind of pull it back, and this is just a nice way to actually set that maximizer threshold while also seeing the gain reduction trace. Finally, someone asked this earlier, so here we go. Talking about optimizing for streaming or for DJ player. Here's the stance that I took as loudness war, that we took as iZotope. We're giving you two options here. Are you going to optimize for streaming or for DJ player? Streaming, is going to learn -10 LUFS as the maximizer threshold. And so, especially because you're supposed to analyze the loudest section, we're thinking, okay, set the loudest section to -10 LUFS. Maybe your integrated LUFS at that point is going to be like -12 to -10, somewhere like there. Good, reasonable dynamic level for Spotify. We're also going to set -1 dB true peak on for streaming, which is just what they actually request. And that prevents clipping the lossy codec that they use, leaving headroom for that codec. But maybe you're not as interested in that, and maybe especially you're a DJ that's going to take this, drop it on a thumb drive, plug it into your deck, and then go play a festival or a club. And so for that, we're going to boost the loudness by 2 dB. Now the middle of this threshold is -8 LUFS, and we are going to set the ceiling all the way up. So it's kind of, are you optimizing for loudness normalized and lossy playback, or lossless, not loudness normalized playback? And I think that hits most of the spectrum of use cases for Ozone here, and that's our stance. Is so far, jack it up for the DJ player. You got to stand out on the dance floor, but for streaming, we can chill it out a little bit, leave some of those dynamics intact.
87% of the plugin boutique community agree.
Good,
nice. Well, this has been incredibly enlightening, Bill. Thank you for going through it and giving us so much of your time. I think everybody agrees that it's just a fantastic product, and it's just in such a good place. It's so great to see it in the place that it's in now as Ozone 10. It really feels like the mastering assistant is doing what it's meant to do. It's doing it really well, while still giving you the flexibility of all the other things that come in the suite. It's important for people who might not know that we are just scratching the surface of what is inside of Ozone, standard and advanced. And that is a question that we can get to in a second, but there's so much more that we don't have time to cover here. We're already coming up on 2 hours, and we've only scratched the new features. So definitely check out, my older videos and what's inside of there. iZotope has tons of great content on their channel as well. Definitely check it out. There's a lot more in there, but I'm sure this has already got you excited enough, if you didn't already know, to check out Ozone.
And we got to hit the grand finale. Don't forget. This kind of saved the best for last.
Oh, remember, that's right. Yeah. Nice.
First question that we got on the stream, what's the most compelling reason to upgrade to Ozone? And I said Master Assistant, and I said it's because it's not just good for beginners, right? This is a super powerful tool for even experts to get that objective second opinion. And part of what can make this Master Assistant so powerful is what this person just called out, being able to actually load in a reference file as a target. And so the way this works, hit this plus button, and it's opened the Finder. And I've got some tracks here. So maybe I'll look at my pop songs, and I am going to choose to match this song to Kiss Me More, Doja Cat. So go ahead and load that song in. We're seeing it's building another mastering chain, and now it's ready to go. And now I have just matched the tonal balance, the width, the microdynamics, and the loudness of Kiss Me More by Doja Cat. And so what you can do is build up an entire library of targets of your favorite songs. And that way it's like, you don't have to take my word for it that this is what good pop sounds like. Make your own target, right? And then look, all of this processing that it's going to set up is now mapped directly to that. So we're seeing, okay, this song was too dynamic. Impact needs to compress it. Imager thinks the bass is too wide, but otherwise the stereo image was pretty much on point. Maximizer is now smashing this song because that Doja Cat song is going to be so loud like we talked about, these mastering engineers, top tier, are still mastering things really loud. So maybe that's not a good choice because there was a lot of work ahead of time to prepare this to be super loud, not just let's reduce the dynamics with the impact module. So, that might not be a good idea. But
so
now,
Bill, that's really interesting. So should you run the mastering assistant first to give Ozone the information about your track and then pull in the target? Because it pulled in that target and then adjusted everything right afterwards. Or can you still just pull in a bunch of targets and then run the mastering assistant?
you need to run the mastering assistant first. So it needs to get the analysis of your song first. Right. And then you can kind of have this new overview where you're setting targets, controlling high level, loading in reference files. And then it'll save this. So if you go open up Ozone in your next session, all of your targets will still be there.
Brilliant.
Super, super powerful feature there.
That is great. I was amazed. I thought literally when you pulled that in and it got done analyzing, I thought we were going to have to redo the original analysis of your track, but you didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, it remembers.
That's amazing. Absolutely. It was a finale.
Yeah, crazy,
my mind
right?
is blown. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Any reference song that you want, match to it in all of these different ways. Yeah, really exciting.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
iZotope at the forefront of it. Love to see it. Love to hear it. Thanks again for doing this. Thanks to everybody who showed up and who's been awesome in the chat. We've got such a great community here on the channel, and it's just wonderful to see everybody engaged, asking great questions, getting their questions answered by the best people to do it. So definitely join us next week for Arturia. And if you don't mind, Bill, I'm just going to go ahead and give a few copies of Ozone away. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Yeah, nice. So everybody say thanks to Bill and iZotope for allowing me to give away 1 copy of Advanced and 2 copies of Standard. This isn't your normal giveaway. This is big beans right here. So what I've got over here, Bill, are 10 lucky people who have been chosen at random for being positive in the chat, and I'm going to ask you to give me your top 3 favorite numbers between 1 and 10, and we're going to give them away. So the first number will be Advanced, and the second 2 will be Standard. So your favorite number between 1 and 10 is going to get a copy of Ozone Advanced right now. No pressure. No pressure.
Got to be a 10 for Ozone 10.
There we go. Oh, layups, bro. I'm giving you layups right now. All right. All right, let me just mark that down over here. And you should hit the like button right now, chat, if you haven't done it yet. I feel like at this day and age, Bill, that I shouldn't have to say it, but sometimes the like count's just so low that it's just necessary at this point. All right, the next 2 runners up for Ozone's runners up. I use that term very, very loosely here. Obviously, Ozone. This actually brings me to a point. I'm just having this moment. Standard. It's obviously a incredible suite in and of itself, but one of the questions that's come up a couple of times that we haven't got to are what are the differences between the 2?
Yeah, so Ozone Standard does not include the new stabilizer and impact modules. It also, so like on this page, you'll just be missing this slider and this slider. It doesn't include the new modules that were added in Ozone 8 and 9, which are Low End Focus, Master Rebalance, and Spectral Shaper. But everything else is there as far
including
as
the
I
Vintage.
know.
Am I mistaken in thinking Vintage used to be part of Advanced?
It used to be. Yeah, I think we added that with Ozone 8, maybe.
Oh. Well, nonetheless, 2 lucky people are going to get Standard right now. Give me 2 numbers, Bill.
My other favorite Ozone 5.
Oh, okay. Let me just see over here. I'll count down.
Classic.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. Got it. And we got 1 more to do.
Let's just go for number 1.
Number 1.
Or my first product.
You've done well. You've done well. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, producers, DJs, and engineers, we've got your winners. The winners of iZotope 10 Standard, courtesy of iZotope and Bill, is Sinane Syndicate and Michael Hopkins. Congratulations. Congratulations. Everybody give them a round of applause for coming through, being positive in the Plugin Boutique dev.stream chat. And finally, the winner. Is this working? The pauses in between words, or is that something I should work on, the delivery of this, Bill? What do you think personally?
You're building the suspense right now?
Yeah, that's what's happening. Even me pausing to talk about whether or not my pausing is working. We're letting people hang on it.
It's probably pretty effective. I would be nervous. Yeah.
If I had time, I'd run a poll, because I've just learned how to do polls yesterday on the RX10 stream, and I'm pretty excited about it. But anyway, without further ado, Johannes Borman, congratulations. You're walking away with a copy of iZotope Ozone 10 Advanced. My goodness. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, Mark, I do need a drum roll. I don't have the drum roll sound effect, and it's killing me. I'm going to sort it for the next stream, okay? But yeah, so if you have won something today, same thing as always, you need to email support@pluginboutique.com with a screen cap of you logged in here on YouTube under that username, and we will get you a copy of what you've won here today. Bill, I said it before, but I'll say it again. Thank you so much for coming through. This really has been enlightening. I've learned a lot. Everybody else has learned a lot, and we are all super excited about not only this version, but what the future holds for not only iZotope and Ozone, but you, man. This is your first project you said you managed?
That's right.
Yeah, big things coming, Bill, down the line. It's you've done a great job. We all appreciate you, and the music world will be better for it. So
thank you. And not just me. The team did an amazing job. We've got great developers, the researchers too. Amazing stuff all over. Great effort from the team.
The whole iZotope family, not even just the Ozone team. We love them on the Plugin Boutique side. So looking forward to seeing what the future holds. And with that, Bill, I'll let you go. I know it's getting late. It's late over here as well. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. And I'll see you next week for the Arturia stream. Keep your eyes posted here on the channel. Hit the bell icon. You know the drill. I'm Joshua Casper, and I'll see you in the next stream.
To the top, ragamuffin keeps striving in every way. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm rhythm in the move, but the rhythm when I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place, I with the one Jamal skinny. We are the general. We sit about the rhythm in the open, the mic incredible. I'm me right palm rhythm in the move, but the rhythm I sit down steady. Every ragamuffin you do, I feel rock and follow me.